Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much indeed. We now have another panel. We've got exactly the right number of chairs set out in front of us. It is maximising profit potential through clever marketing and shrewd revenue management. And this is going to be led for us by something of an IT guru who hosts the Travel Market Life podcast, amongst many other things. His name is Ryan Haynes, and he will introduce the panel. Ryan Haynes, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all. And it's wonderful for me to be here because after about 15 years of sending people to this event, clients and sales teams finally can not only stand up on stage and moderate an interesting conversation with these three wonderful people in the audience, but also have the chance to chit-chat with you. Yes, Ryan Haynes. I run a marketing communications agency specializing in technology in the industry. So it's right up my street when it comes to looking at marketing and revenue. I also host the Travel Market Life podcast, where I've spoken to Jane a number of times, and she's been wonderfully involved in a number of my events, and a number of you hoteliers who I see here in the audience as well. So it's also wonderful to see you again. But we're here to look at, indeed, clever marketing and shrewd revenue with Neetu Mistry, Gemma Hynes, so close to Haynes, and Michael Baxter. So first, if you can explain, just share with everybody where you come from and what you do.
Hi, Gemma. I'm Hynes. I'm from Affinity, which is a booking engine and technology company. We're based primarily out of Ireland. That's where head office is, but we work with hotels across the UK and Ireland. Previous experience is hotels. I've been with Affinity now nearly over 11 years. So prior to that, it was hotels in sales and marketing and revenue. So have hopefully a little bit of knowledge that I can share today.
Excellent, thanks Gemma. Hi everyone, my name is Neetu Mistry. I am the Chief Commercial Officer at Cycas Hospitality. We're a third-party hotel operator, so we have just up to 50 hotels now across Europe, working with all the big major global brands, but also a lot of independent hotels as well, so excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Mike Baxter. I'm the founder of a brand called House of Gods. We're an independent hotel brand that's come out of Scotland. I've been in the hotel business for about 10 years now. I started with a hostel aptly named the Baxter. Obviously, that's my second name. I felt if it was good enough for the Hiltons, it was good enough for me. I started with that. I'd kind of come through nightclubs and property development, so I'm not, was naturally a hotelier at all. I then moved down to London and opened a hotel at Hackney Central Station called Kip, and I joke that it's essentially a hipster's travel lodge. And then a few years later, I decided to open House of Gods, which is a very experiential and quite novel hotel brand.
Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. Michael, it's absolutely fascinating, the House of Gods. You just go onto the website and suddenly you're immersed into this whole new world. Yeah. Where did you originally come up with that concept and think about how you were going to build a product around a particular type of guest?
Right, okay, so I was living down in London. I'm going to go totally off on a tangent here. I was living down in London and I was... I'd not long opened Kip Hotel, and in the industry at the time, this is about 2015, everyone was talking about experience. This is going to be the next big thing, and but I was spending quite a lot of time in Shoreditch House, right? So the aesthetic that I was kind of really into was the kind of like strip, very kind of like the original Hoxton, like kind of stripped back concrete, lots of timber, like a very kind of hipster vibe. And I was fortunate enough to be invited very much as a +1 to the opening of Annabelle's in Mayfair. And I remember going there and I felt like I'd fallen down the rabbit hole. I'd kind of walked into this building that was just so maximalist and over the top and completely the opposite to the aesthetic that I was into. And the next morning with a bit of a hangover, I happened to be in Dalston. And at the time I was going around various venues and looking at them and going, I would take pictures of like cool coffee shops and all the rest of it to try and get the idea of the vibe of the hotel that I was going to open in Edinburgh, which is now House of Gods. And I saw this cool shop and I needed some water and some paracetamol, so I went into the shop and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's got the concrete worktop, it's got the vines falling out of the wine box of the tomatoes and all the rest of it. I'm taking some photos. And I kind of came out of the shop and I was like, oh, I wonder what kind of shop that was. And I looked up and it said Spar. And I was like, oh my God, this aesthetic's over, right? So, and of course I'd been at Annabelle's the night before, and I was like, right, there's something in this like kind of real maximalist kind of experiential sort of vibe. And I suppose that was kind of the birthplace and the idea of where House of Gods originally came from.
I mean, it is phenomenally opulent from what you can
right.
see across your social media channels and your website. But with that, having that idea, how do you identify the right target audience that you can then drill down to and really create that demand for such a new brand like House of Gods?
Yeah. So I think the word's brand, right? You have to first off know who you are as a brand before you can know who your customer is. And what we did was we, as I kind of explained, I wanted something that was incredibly like, I wanted you to walk into the hotel and you're like, I've fallen down the rabbit hole. I've never seen anything like this before. So what we did was we kind of like, I looked at, the great heritage hotels of the world, your Savoys, your Dorchesters, all that kind of aesthetic. And then we don't quite have the footprint or the building. So I was like, right, we need to maybe think a little bit more Orient Express. So like we kind of were able to kind of contain that aesthetic into a smaller footprint. And then we're like, right, well, but what's going to, attract a kind of like, a contemporary customer? I was like, well, throw in neon, cocktails, and Drake, right? And we kind of like mashed all of that up and, took lots of different ideas from all over the place. And, House of Gods was kind of born out of that, right? So what we've kind of landed with is an accessible luxury product, right? So, then you kind of like can ask yourself like, well, who's your target audience? Well, who likes luxury, right? And like, who likes to be treated well and who likes it to be done at a fair price? So that was kind of like, how we identified like who our customers were. That's everyone. So I kind of joke now, I kind of categorize it to different people. So one of the great things about House of Gods is it's not tribal in the sense of like, we're not like a golf-focused hotel whereby you have to be into golf or, it's not, it kind of appeals to many, many different tribes. So your Balenciaga Love Island kid will come into the hotel and they'll see the Gucci wallpaper and the neon. Maybe your goth will come into the hotel and they'll see the oak paneling and the velvet. And then maybe your new mum will come into the hotel and they'll see the butler running around with the glass of Prosecco that they can press on demand. So I think that, create something that's that is really, really honest and is your brand. And then, from there we were kind of able to kind of see who the target audience is, and then we can kind of talk to them in their, with their own aesthetic filter or their own filter of what they see the hotel as.
Now, Neetu, I mean, it's quite different at Cycas because you're representing 50-odd properties. Some of them are global brands, others are independent properties. To manage such a wide portfolio that are so different to one another, how do you make sure that you remain square tight on the right target audience to secure that demand and raise the ADR?
I think it's a really good question, and I think just picking up on what Mike said, it goes back to the identity. And then I know it was talked about earlier on today, but understanding your product, your location, all of those things that we always talk about. But I think the identity is the key piece, and knowing what you're trying to deliver, whether it's service, product, etc. So I think it's very much bespoke to the different types of properties that we run. We have big M&E houses where you know what type of customer will come to those properties and deliver the revenue performance there. And then we have really unique propositions. We have a property that is completely unmanned. So you book it through an app, you arrive, there's no one there, you go to your room, you enjoy your experience and you leave and you never get to speak to anyone. For a lot of people, this is good fun. I kind of enjoy this as well at certain times. But for other people, then you're missing out on the experience that we're talking about, which a lot of people enjoy about hospitality. So I think when you're running multiple hotels in those different capacities, it really goes back to understanding what you're trying to deliver to the customer and making sure that what that is, you do really, really well.
How do you, I mean, sometimes the challenge is when you're working with those global brands, how do you make that stand out in the market when perhaps you're towing some sort of general global campaign?
Yeah, and I think this is probably something that everybody asks, but in those examples, it really goes down to, at grassroots level, how does the customer engage with the team on property, and that service element and that experience that they have when they walk through the door, or even from the point of booking to walking through and walking out of the door, is delivered by that guest experience. And therefore the operational side and the people side that we keep talking about today is so key in that, because you already know what you've booked or what you're booking because you're going and conforming to a standard. When you want an experience, you'll go and experience something like House of Gods that we've spoken about, but when you really want a practical, functional hotel stay, then you go and book where you see that profile. So then it all becomes about how do you get those customers to come back to you? It's through not just the loyalty programs, but also the experience that they have, because there's multiple of those brands everywhere. So what makes them stay with your hotel versus any other of those brands outside?
Absolutely. Now, Gemma, I mean, what is the infrastructure that you work with your hotels to help better understand that target audience, but also the high-value guests that you can bring into the property?
Yes, so I suppose we work predominantly with independent hotels, so we have to, I suppose, arm them and facilitate them with understanding their markets really is the big thing. And, you know, a client like House of Gods who know their brand so well, like, is a dream, because you go, okay, this is how we'll work with it, this is where we'll go, this is the type of system setup you need and everything like that. But, you know, some hotels go, no, I want to appeal to everybody. And you're kind of going, okay, let's drill this down a little bit. So we end up, you know, looking at their Google Analytics, taking GA4, looking at their demographics, pulling data from their booking engine and going, okay, let's identify who your key markets are, looking at OTAs and saying, well, you know, what's coming through your OTA channels? What channels can we kind of tap into and things like that. So we help and I suppose arm clients to understand their markets a lot better, but to drive that direct booking. And when you understand your markets and stop trying to appeal to everybody, that's when you'll see the better increase in your revenue and ultimately your profit and your bottom line, because you're getting a better mix of customers through the door. Like, so that's what we would do, is arm them as much as possible. Data's king, but it's also how you analyze that data is key. Like, and you know, you need to talk to people at the desk as well. What do they see coming in? Because sometimes the people in the back office we're all great, like, you know, reading data, but the people in the front line are the people who actually probably know your guests better than anybody. Like, so use them as well, and then, you know, work with your agencies and your partners to market and deliver and drive that revenue.
I was going to say, I mean, we all talk about data and the wonderful uses of data and how that can give you that visibility of what your audience and how your business is performing. But it's like collecting that data within the hospitality environment. It's making sure, I guess, that your team front of house, they don't see it as a laborious task, that is embedded within that guest journey. What are the ways in which you can actually grab and capture that data in a seamless way where both the staff and also the guests don't necessarily realizing that that data is
They're giving their data
captured
away. Yeah, especially in GDPR, where they're all educated so much more now. Before this, you'd tick the box to give the email. But I think, you know, it's education is the start. You need to educate your teams and make them understand why you're looking for this data, and, you know, even take it into outside of hotels, but us as a company, we have to educate people why we want our CRM system updated, that if this field isn't updated, well, we can't communicate with X, Y, and Z, or we don't know this background history. So it's educating the reasons why, and you're not trying to make anybody's job more difficult, you're just trying to get the right data. But use your systems, use, you know, all your partners, make sure your technology all talks to each other. You know, there's no point in having a booking engine over here, website over here, CRM system over here, PMS system, and none of it talking to each other. Like, you know, in an ideal world, your whole tech stack should be seamlessly integrated, so there's information flowing then as well. Some clients that we've worked with have rewarded staff, like at the front desk, like, you know, make it a game, make it an incentive, collecting data as well, like where you need it. But ultimately, you know, and it's a balance, because you'll talk to providers like us and we're saying reduce the number of booking fields you have on your reservation form because that hinders conversion, and keep it simple. But then you need to be rewarding at the front desk to make sure you get that information, or at the reservation stage. So yeah, that'd be my tips.
I mean, we can capture it through people, Neetu, or through technology. Between the branded hotels and your independent hotels, where is the most success that you've seen of being able to capture data and actually complete a better guest profile?
I think it varies vastly in terms of, I go back to what are we trying to achieve with individual properties and what are the kind of owner objectives around delivering the performance. I think the more agile environment is the independent site, because you can engage in new technologies, you can sign up to new things, you can test and trial, you own and proprietary can manage that information and that data source. In the branded environment, you also then have this, but to a different level. So you may be controlled in certain elements, but you can also then get a lot more context. And depending on cost, you can sort of see where the two vary. But I think the really interesting thing for me about the data, because everybody talks about this and we want more and more and more, but when we're making decisions from the information, it's really important to understand the context of the data. So if we're gathering guest information or profiles of customers, well, what's the context of that and what are we trying to achieve from that information? Because obviously the right thing is driving revenue and the most profitable revenue, but the context of why guests share that information, what is important to them, why have they come to your property, what experience do they want, understanding that context to then be able to use the data appropriately. Lots of finance people in the room also, so I don't want to offend anyone, but they all know what I mean. You can really easily read numbers and make assumptions, but if you don't understand the context behind that information, then those assumptions could be either really wildly out or could be accurate. But yeah, it's that differential that's important.
Well, let's turn our heads to revenue for a second, particularly upselling and perhaps trying to get more revenue out of a guest. And this is something at House of Gods that you've particularly taken a unique approach with by using your staff. So how do you work with your guests before arrival and up on arrival to see what the opportunities are for gaining extra revenue?
Yeah, I think that we first have to understand that the approach with House of Gods is to really sell the experience over the room sale, right? So we our brand is all about that special occasion, right? We niche down to anniversary, birthday, proposal, I'm sorry. These are the kind of reasons that people come to House of Gods. Nobody's ever come to House of Gods because they've got a meeting at 9:30 the next morning, right? So what we do is we have a package. We call it Treat Me Like I'm Famous, and it kind of originated from the idea that anybody that comes to the hotel should be have the opportunity to be treated like a rock star. And that's very much part of the story that we tell as a brand. So we've already at the point where the customer's gone to the website, engaged with the socials, say, gone to the website and purchased. I think we've got 50-60% package purchase at point of room sale. We then we have loads and loads of tech that kind of send people messages and all the rest of it, but one of the things that we do, and unfortunately we still can do very well as a small brand, is we pick up the phone to the customer, right? So, we didn't at the beginning, and guest satisfaction was really, really poor because it was hard to understand exactly what you were going to get. So we pick up the phone to the customer. We've got an incredible team. They're just so full of fun. And honestly, sometimes when I'm listening to them on the phone, I'm like, you want to go more than the customer wants to go to House of Gods. And then what we do is we just kind of talk through the experience, and from that point, we can gauge what's going on. If it is a birthday or some sort of celebration or a proposal, and we can we can really tailor that experience to the customer. And listen, this is thinking about it that way and doing it that way is, it's just really paid dividends, because I think that if your approach is we need to increase revenue, our TrevPAR, and you think, well, let's get a bottle of Moët and make it 60 quid and you can throw it on top of your room and you think that that's going to in somehow like, you know, dazzle your guests, and I think it's the wrong approach. I think you've got to like kind of like think about, you know, you've got to really think about it differently, you know.
Upselling is a big thing, obviously, as well, as you say, personalising this, and you've had some interesting data from Net Affinity.
Yes, so I suppose we see it on a global scale. We work with 300, 400 hotels. So when you look at analysing the data, we would look at kind of, you know, we call them extras, but it's upsells essentially. So, you know, of clients that have had upsells on during their booking journey, you see 20% extra revenue coming through, like, you know, so there's significant extra revenue to be got. But it has to suit the brand, and it goes back to what Mike is saying. You know, you can't just assume it's a bottle of bubbly for every hotel that's what's going to work. You know, well, why do I want to? And it has to relate back to the package. So what we kind of say to clients is, you know, don't have the same extras on for every package. Like, you know, don't, if I'm buying a B&B, offer me breakfast and the next step was my upsell. Like, you know my market and know who you're selling to, and then it works. Obviously, upgrades is another, you know, get that last bit for just €20, you get £20, you get that extra stay. And again, we've seen significant, about 11% of upsells kind of increase in revenue. So yeah, there's good kind of stats there in that ancillary revenue for sure.
Well, in a blink of an eye, it just feels like it's all over, and I'm afraid we have come to an end. But it is, know your brand, know what you stand for, gather that data, assess it, analyse it, and make sure you pinpoint and identify the right moment to get the extra revenue from your guest. Well, that's us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to Ryan, to Michael, to Gemma, and to Neetu. I'm only standing over here, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't really want to be seen next to such a cool and trendy panel. It makes me feel a bit of an old fuddy-duddy.